Good evening, students. Welcome back to our 12th CS class. Last class we had seen how to insert data into our student table in MySQL using our Python MySQL connectivity module. Yeah. Today we are going to see how to extract the data from the table and display it in a meaningful way. In our previous classes, we have already seen how to execute the select star query from our Python function so that we can access the data stored in the MySQL database table and display it to our user through our Python console. Today, we will be looking at two functions. First step, we will look at what we need to import. We need to import MySQL.connector module so that we are able to connect to the database, and we have a few global functions here. The database we are using is Sakila, and we are connecting to our own system's database server, MySQL server. So our host name is localhost, and the table we are going to be accessing is student. Now we come to the function. The function name is display, and we are not passing any arguments. We are looking at the global variables. First step, as in any connectivity program, is to establish a connection to the DBMS. And then the second step is to create the cursor object, and on top of the cursor we will be executing the queries and extracting the result. So the first step is done using the MySQL.connector.connect method. This method is taking the following keyword arguments: host equal to localhost, user equal to root, the password is equal to the password of the DBMS, MySQL DBMS for root user, database is equal to Sakila, and port equal to 3306. This is the default port. Even without specifying the 3306, it defaults to 3306 for MySQL. Coming back, once we have connected, we are just printing that we have successfully connected to the database. Please note the use of %s, %s. These are the placeholders I am using, and I am passing the variables which I am connecting. Accessing data from student table. Then on top of the connection, once this connect method has returned a connection object, MySQL connection object. That connection object we have named it as MyDB. Now using MyDB connection object, I am creating a cursor object. The cursor object is now part of the MyDB connection object. It is a attribute of the MyDB connection object. Cursor. The cursor function or method belongs to the connection object. I am calling the cursor method of connection object, which returns a MySQL cursor object, which I am naming as a display cursor. Now the query I am running is select star from student where roll number in 20, 30, 40. I am not displaying all the data from the table because we have too many rows. So I construct the query. You please remember, whenever you are constructing the query should be exactly as it is written in our typed in our SQL client, MySQL client. And then we are just telling the user what query we are executing, and on top of the cursor object we call the execute method belonging to the cursor object, and we are passing the query. For row in display cursor, when we call the execute method, what happens? The execute method returns a list of all the resultant records in the table. The tuples in the table are returned as tuple objects in our Python. Tuple and row in our table. Tuple corresponds to row in MySQL database. Remember? So that same tuple here, when it is coming to Python, again it is cast into it returns a tuple of tuples. Or this execute function is going to return nested tuples depending on how many rows it is returning. So what I am doing is, the cursor is already will be containing the resultant data for this select statement. That data I am iterating over the cursor, and I am printing the row. This is our simple method which we have already seen previously. I am just reiterating this to highlight the difference between this function and the next one. So let us run it. All other functions are commented. You can see connected to Sakila database, accessing table student, executing this query, and this is the result of the query. Now these query, you can see it is the tuple data type and it contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements in the tuple, which corresponds to each field value in our table. But retrieving data this way is not very meaningful, in the sense we are not able to know what is roll number 20, what does 56 mean. We would have to guess. So just by iterating over the cursor object and printing the data in the cursor object, we are not getting a very user friendly output. So this is an unformatted way just to take the data or retrieve the data from the table. So we will look on to a better way. This way works if you know which is the column, which is the what are the different values. It is well and fine, but a more user friendly method I will show you to you now. Let us comment this out. Now we are coming to the next function where we are trying to display the same data in a better manner. Here I'll be introducing a few more terminologies or methods and attributes of the cursor object. Again, same step we are following. We are opening the cursor connection, we are printing the connection details, then we are creating the cursor object, and we have running the same exact query. We are framing the query and we are executing the query. From here the difference begins. After executing the query, instead of directly iterating over the cursor object, I am calling a special method of the cursor object known as fetchAll. This fetchAll also does the same thing as execute, but it is returning, instead of iterating over the cursor object, I am taking all the data present in the cursor object and fetching the data again as a nested tuple. Why we need to call fetchAll is, if once we do the fetchAll, the data is present with the fetchAll method and the data is removed from the cursor object. It is no more in an unread state. If we do not iterate over a cursor after executing a query, we try to execute another query, we get the error unread error. To avoid this, it is always better after executing a query to read the data, fetch the data and read it. So the fetchAll method is useful for that purpose. We are taking all the data from the cursor and we are returning a nested tuple which I have named as result. Now if you remember seeing our result, we did not know what are the names, column headers of these things. So we are trying to find out what 20, 30, 40, BB, CC, DD mean. For that, we have one more attribute of the cursor object known as column names. The column names attribute of the cursor object is a tuple containing the field names of the table, or the attributes of the table. So that I am taking, again it is a tuple and I am naming it as HDR or header. Here I have initialized a row count variable to keep track of the rows. Now I am iterating over the nested tuple. For each record in result object, I am printing record number and I am using the counter. I am using a placeholder here. I am using the counter. Please remember, whenever we are using placeholders, after the string we do not place a comma. If you do this, you will get an error. No comma. Immediately after the string, percentage, the variable which has to be brought into the string. Okay, please remember this. Now coming back, we are iterating over each record in the result. If you remember, the records are 3. So each record is one row. And for each row, I am matching the header index equal to row index. And then I am increasing the count. And here one more new attribute of the cursor object I will introduce, which is row count. Row count is the attribute of the cursor object which returns the number of rows which are retrieved from the table when you run the select statement, or which are updated when you run the update statement. Row count will have some value when update or select statement is executed by our execute method. The number of rows retrieved or updated will be represented by row count, or they will be updated in row count. So that also we are putting here. Then we are closing the connection. Now I will run this function and show you. You can yourselves tell me which is better understood or more user friendly. F5, run. See, let us magnify. Same thing, connected to SQL database, executing. Now here we are saying record 1, roll number is 20, name is BBB, class is 9B, total marks 56, grade D. Record 2, record 3, total records displayed is 3. This is what is coming from this function method, and the previous method, this data was, this is in a simple way without any formatting, we did it this way. But we can also use the various attributes of the MySQL cursor object to better format our output. As is very clear here, this is a better way to display the data. It is more meaningful because we are using the column names attribute and iterating it here, header of index. So header of 0 is roll, and row of 0 is roll number 20. So roll equal to 20. I am matching the header value along with the row value. The indexing is the same. The length of header and the length of row are going to be the same. For better clarity, I will print header for you here so that you get a column header. HDR. You can see what are the values, and then you can see match it with the data here. F5, run. See here the column headers are roll number, name, class, section, total marks, grade. That only we are matching with the data. The data is the same data that is here. So we could always be doing this also. Print column header and print result. And let us just comment this out. This is how for row in result print row. Let us go with print row. It's similar to what we had earlier in the previous function. I'm showing you the difference. So we have done column header, roll, names, class, section, total marks, then 20. So you got to manually think and match. Roll 20 is roll, BBB is name, 9B is class, 56 is total marks, D is grade. Either you do something like this, or you can with a few couple of lines of code, you can very easily make it more meaningful this way. I hope these new attributes are very clear to you, what they do and how to use them. I hope this is clear to you. I'll just quickly brush it up. Connect method we know is for establishing a connection to the MySQL DBMS, where we are passing various keyword arguments and we are creating a connection object. Within that object we have a cursor method which creates a SQL cursor object for us. This cursor object is necessary for us to execute queries. So once that cursor object is created successfully, we call the execute method of that cursor object and pass the string SQL query as a string to it, and this execute method over on top of this connection, it executes the query and retrieves the data. Once the data is retrieved, it is present in the cursor object, and we extract the data from the cursor object using the fetch all method, which will take all the data from the cursor object and return it as a nested tuple. The header column names of the table data are stored in the attribute column names of the cursor object. And the row count attribute of the cursor object returns the number of rows that were retrieved by the select statement or updated by the update statement, we can use either. So here we are matching the column header with the row value, each particular row value. So finally we'll run once more and show it to you. See, 3 rows, 20, 30, 40. So this is how we do it. Hope this is clear and you have understood the various attributes of cursor object introduced here. Thank you.